snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is actually one that I received from NetGalley for free in exchange for an honest review. So just full disclosure to you guys, I got this book free, and it's called The Three Body Problem. It's by Cixin. I really don't know how you say it, I'm very sorry. It's The Three Body Problem, which is actually a translation that has been translated into English just recently from Chinese. It's actually a very big best-selling sci-fi book over in China and has been for a while, but it's only just been translated over into the UK and other countries, which is a really cool thing, and it's kind of like the start of making other big books from the East kind of come over to the West and be translated, so that a lot more of the more indie books get translated, and basically we get to share more of our culture with the other side of the world, which I think is a really cool thing, so definitely I'm down for that. Now, I will be honest, I am not a sci-fi reader usually. I haven't read much sci-fi, and I haven't read much sci-fi that I've understood if I have read sci-fi, so I would not call myself a scientist, I would not call myself a sci-fi expert. But even though saying all that, I did really enjoy this story, and I did really enjoy the concepts that it brought to light and the ideas that it explained, because it was a very, very approachable way of writing, and the characters felt very genuine, they felt very believable, and the storyline felt like it was easy to understand, even though there was a lot of science and it was very complicated at points. It was so well explained that I think I got most of it, I think. We'll see. So, The Three Body Problem. A lot of people have had a little bit of difficulty trying to explain what the three body problem is, and I had never heard of it before reading this, but the book itself explained it in a very cool way through the use of a video game, and I really enjoy seeing video games kind of integrated into a storyline. I think that's a really cool way of doing things, and this book did it really well. So within that game, they actually explain what the three body problem is. Basically, you have a body, not a body like a body, you have a body like a mass, like a sun or a star or a planet, something like that. You have three big bodies with one small body in the middle of them. So you have like a small thing with three big things, and because the three big things are in space and the small thing is in space, basically they have gravity, and the big things, because they're bigger, they have more gravity than the small thing, and so the small thing in the middle of the three gets dragged all around by the others, and it's a very random cycle. There is no pattern to it, there is nothing that really can be predicted about where the pattern is going to go, and so it's an eternal problem within science that I had no idea about before reading this book, but it's quite a cool idea, and it makes sense, so now you know if I explained that well enough. I don't know if I did, so sorry if you didn't get that, but ignore that bit. When I began this story, I was really intrigued because it started out in a very political heavy way, and it didn't have much sci-fi in it at all, and I was kind of wondering when the sci-fi elements were going to start to come into play. It was very much about the revolution in China, and it was very much kind of very, very focused on politics and the ideas that surrounded the armies and the problems that they were having, sort of setting up their new society and things like that. That was interesting, but I was much more interested in the sci-fi element that didn't come in until a little bit later. It didn't last like very long, so don't get bogged down in the politics and think, oh no, this is going to be a political heavy book, because there are political undertones throughout the whole thing, but there are definitely way more exciting things going on that you don't have to worry about the politics if you don't want to, but if you do, it's there for you to look at. This is definitely an adult book. It's not a dumbed down version, but it is a very approachable, organic way of explaining things. I felt like all of the explanations of the science were very easy to understand, or if they weren't easy, they didn't make me feel dumb reading them, which was a nice thing. Even if I didn't understand it, I felt like, you know, I could get a general picture for what was going on. Even if I didn't understand all the ins and outs of everything, I could still understand enough to feel like I wasn't being taken out of the story and my immersion wasn't ruined. The storyline and the characters themselves were actually really interesting. At first I was a little bit confused because the names, I had to get used to that, but you do get used to it really quickly, Like with fantasy names that are completely bizarre, sometimes they take you a little while to get into. That's what happened with this book, but once I did, I was used to it, and there are two major characters who we really follow their storylines. Each of these characters has their own individual personality, and you can tell who's talking once you get used to it, so that meant that I wasn't constantly confused like I thought I might be at first, and things definitely were quite clear and quite approachable, so don't worry about the science, that's what I would say. The storyline definitely felt like it came first, and then the sci-fi element was kind of an add-on to that, but not like a bad add-on, a good add-on, it just worked well. So the two characters that we follow, the first one is called Yi Wenji, and she is an astrophysicist, and basically her father gets killed straight at the beginning. Her father, who was also a scientist, kind of influenced her to go into science, and we follow her as a young girl right at the very start up until she's quite an old woman at the end, and we follow her life and the things that have happened to her over her life. Some of them quite tragic, some of them really extraordinary, and some of them just plain bizarre, so it's quite interesting to see her storyline. We really kind of get this feeling that she's quite a down-to-earth woman. She knows what she wants and she will kind of stick to it, but she's also a little bit desperate at times, and she clutches at things sometimes that maybe aren't that realistic. She does make mistakes is what I'm trying to say basically, and that makes her all the more human because she's made those mistakes that we don't always see in stories. Sometimes characters are built to be perfect people, and I don't really like that. I quite like having a character who is a little bit more maybe inclined to make mistakes, but actually learns from the mistakes and kind of develops in a much more human way. So I liked her storyline, and even though things happened to make us question whether she is a good or bad character, I still really enjoyed her character as a whole and thought that it was a very, very well-rounded, very cool storyline with her character. Next we have Wang Miao, who is a nanomaterials researcher, and he is again fairly down to earth and fairly believable. He becomes involved in a completely different storyline to Yi Wenji, and his storyline basically starts when a lot of different scientists all over the world have started to commit suicide as a theme that has been spotted, that all of these people around the world have started to commit suicide and no one really knows why. They're all involved in science in some way, and so he is kind of brought in to see if he can shed some light on the situation and help them find out why all of these different various really intelligent, very, very well put together people are kind of offing themselves. And it's throughout Wang's storyline that we actually get introduced to the three-body video game that I mentioned earlier. He basically encounters this video game which simulates a world, and it's really cool. I absolutely really enjoyed that. They were probably my favourite sections throughout the whole of the book, were the video game parts. I enjoyed them a lot. I thought they were very, very good at explaining things in a really, really cool way and making science very interesting, because I'll be honest, I'm not a huge science nerd and it doesn't interest me that much unless, you know, it's something I'm really involved in, but this was a really, really great way of getting me to feel like I could understand it even though it was quite complex. It really gripped my attention and just made his storyline very, very interesting, and the way that he sorted through everything and was very practical and pragmatic about how he thought about everything really made him a very cohesive and understandable character, and just made me enjoy his storyline and enjoy his personality. So both of these storylines are of course intertwined in various ways, and we kind of discover those as we go through the storyline. By the end of the whole book you realise how everything is connected. It builds up to a really, really big, climatic, massive ending, which is pretty crazy. I would definitely say that if you like sci-fi and if you're into sci-fi, why not check this out? It's a really, really cool one. It didn't feel like it was translated, it felt really easy to read, it was not at all jarring in any way. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was very, very approachable, very, very easy to access for anyone, because I don't have a huge understanding of massive amounts of science, but it was very cool, very easy to get. It didn't feel forced in any way, and I just enjoyed the storyline. It was a really good storyline once I really got into it. I'd say that the first half of the book is much more about setup, and the second half is where everything sort of takes off. This is the first book in a trilogy, I believe. The other two in the trilogy have not been translated yet, but I do believe that they are in the works, so hopefully they will come out soon, and I definitely intend to pick up the next one whenever it does come out, because I really enjoyed this and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, so yeah. If you've read this book, then let me know your thoughts about it down below, and if you are interested in picking it up, then let me know that as well, because I'm really intrigued by who would be into this sort of thing. I really enjoyed it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I didn't have a clue about it going into it, so it was quite open as to whether or not I would like it, but I did enjoy it, and I think it's a really fun read, so go for it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all very soon in my next video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about books.